Make sure you take care of Michael Torres there. He's a good friend and colleague, one of our brightest minds out of the medical center. Make sure he gets a drink. So this is, I think, our third or fourth meeting of some really special talent. We started this program because I have the privilege to meet so many talented people in Houston that really are making a difference. And my guests this evening for this conversation, fireside chat, please welcome to the stage Steve Kean, President and CEO of the Greater Houston Partnership.
All right, man. Thank you.
Right over here. You're in the far seat.
Okay.
Anyone that knows this program will find this is not your normal softball throw up and tell me about the Greater Houston Partnership. Anyone that doesn't know the Greater Houston Partnership, we don't want to talk to them because they're not in the know. But I'm going to take you through. First, this is a participation event, so I want you to get your phones out. How many people ask you to get your phones out? Grab them. I want you to plug this number in because the most exciting part about these fireside chats are the questions that come from the audience. And we have, I think, we have live coming in, so it will come through to the marketing group. They will send that on to me, and I'll ask you live questions. But what we do here that's different is a lot of people know your professional accomplishments, but now we want to show a little bit about the background of the people. So, and I have to say, before we get started, when Steve came in and took the job, I could not have been more excited, not just because of all of his incredible accomplishments, but now we've been able to work together, and I think he's going to make a tremendous change in this city. I mean, he's really kind of the chief business officer as I see it. So already we're doing more things already in his short tenure than we've done in a long time. So I'm excited about it. So now we're going to test. So this is a visual. Steve, I want you to look at this picture and tell me what that is and tell the audience.
That's my hometown, Dubuque, Iowa.
Dubuque, Iowa. And we're going to learn a lot about Iowa tonight, okay? And tell me about this.
That's Cy Cyclone, the mascot for Iowa State University of Science and Technology.
All right, we've studied Cy and Cyclone. We're going to go back in history. The original mascot for your alma mater was not Cy, this bird. It was a cyclone. And I think the marketing department's complained for like 50 years. So they actually did a survey, a campaign out to the students. I don't know if you know this.
I don't know this.
Well, 17 students came up with Cy, C-Y. And that's how Cy was selected. And he's actually a lot more. I think the people in marketing had a hard time like throwing a cyclone out onto a football field.
They used to do that though. When a touchdown was scored, the band and the cheerleaders and everybody would go and run in a tight circle in the end zone.
Is that right?
Yeah. There's a cyclone in the end zone. Yeah.
Is this a step back or forward with the bird? Speaking of, so there's Iowa State University, your undergraduate, your bachelor's degree from there. Tell us about this building.
That's the University of Iowa College of Law. In that building, I did not attend. We were in a rickety, ramshackle building that ultimately was turned over to the art department. That was the new building, which I got to see coming out of the ground, but I never attended that.
Wow,
yeah.
All right. So I always ask people, because when people ask me, I'm from Connecticut, people say, do you know Connecticut? So you're from Iowa. I'm going to do a little test of how well you know Iowa.
It's been a long time.
Okay,
yeah.
Iowa's state bird.
Goldfinch?
Wow.
That came way out of nowhere.
Wow. The Eastern Gulf, round of applause, please. Love when people know they're home. All right. See, we're doing okay so far.
We're doing all right.
We're
So far, so good.
All right. What does Iowa mean? I'll tell you.
I think it's an Indian phrase. Beautiful land.
It's actually, it means beautiful land. That's a great one. I'd be using that all the time if I was running Iowa's campaign. Okay. Do you know Iowa's hog to human ratio?
I know the former exceeds the latter. I'm going to say 1.25, 1.5.
Au contraire, my friend.
7 to
7
1.
to 1. 7 hogs for every person.
We had fewer hogs and more people when I was there.
Okay. All right. Do you know this cat? Otto Frederick Rohwedder.
No, I do not.
Well, we should all know this. It affects all of our lives. He was the original person of the sliced bread. The inventor of the sliced bread, owned by Iowa. I mean, I'm a PBJ family. I'm one of 13 kids. You grew up, you're one of 5.
5.
Right? I wouldn't be here without peanut butter and jelly and sliced bread, so this means a lot to me to see this. Okay? So now we're going to do a test of famous people. First, David Brenner, Johnny Carson. Which one's from Iowa?
Johnny Carson, Corning, Iowa.
Here we go. All right, see, it's working. John Wayne or Ward Bond?
John Wayne, Winterset, Iowa.
Wow. So who's Ward Bond? I don't know who Ward Bond is. Tatum? Where did you get that?
I think he was from Connecticut. I think he was from Connecticut.
Ashton Kutcher or Wilmer Valderrama?
Ashton Kutcher, he was actually born in Amana Colonies.
Ping! Look at this. All right, one more. Gabby Douglas, Sean Johnson.
Gabby Douglas?
Uh-oh. Sean Johnson. Okay, so enough about Iowa. I want to talk about your journey here. What brought you from Iowa to Houston, Texas?
Work. I had actually come from Iowa to El Paso, Texas, and I came here for work. Worked in the natural gas industry while in El Paso. We moved to back home, Omaha, Nebraska, when we had our first daughter. And so I was working there in the energy business. Working in the energy business in Omaha, Nebraska is a limited ceiling. And so we had a chance to, I was working for Northern Natural Gas, which was an Enron subsidiary at the time. I got promoted and an opportunity to move to Houston before our daughter started school, and so we took it. And so not really thinking I was coming here for anything other than work, and then we couldn't believe what a great place we had stumbled into, how open the place was to newcomers, and how much opportunity there was here. So came for work and then fell in love with the place.
Yeah. Tell me about your days at Enron.
Yeah, so I worked at Enron for 13 years. As I said, started in Omaha, Nebraska. I was there until the bitter end, which was 2001, and had the great good fortune of having worked with some wonderful people. This is a part of the story that you never hear. 20,000 people, many of whom were just really good, hardworking, intelligent people trying to get things done. I had the good fortune of working for a couple of those folks who ended up at Kinder Morgan. And so when Enron blew up, they said, actually it's a little longer story than that. When it was coming undone, they approached me about coming to work at Kinder Morgan. Deb McDonald, who's still on the board at Kinder Morgan, she was had been one of my bosses at Enron and was now running one of the gas pipelines at Kinder Morgan. And I said, no, we're merging with Dynegy. I'm on the integration team. I've worked here for 13 years. I need to see this through for the people that I work with. 3 weeks later, it was in bankruptcy, something like that. And I called and I said, hey, do you still need somebody? And to my great good fortune, they did. And I got hired, and it's the best thing that ever happened in my career.
Oh, well, I was going to say, that great transition. Tell us about Kinder Morgan. What an amazing organization, and you led it. So tell us about when you arrived and what happened through the years.
Fantastic organization, and still very much is. Founded by Rich Kinder and Bill Morgan, and a business that got built out of next to nothing, and became one of the biggest energy infrastructure companies in North America, and still very much kept its culture of getting things done, being cost conscious, being safe in operations, getting things done for our customers, continuing to grow the business, take care of employees, all of those things continued from its very beginnings all the way through. I had the great privilege of, I did a number of different things there. I ran a gas pipeline in the state of Texas. That was my first kind of big break on the commercial side. I served as chief operating officer for a while. I served as president of the gas business unit, which was the biggest unit of Kinder Morgan at the time. And then ultimately, Rich approached me about becoming president, and with an eye toward you'll be CEO one day. So you got to be saying yes to both. You know, it's not a step. You have to be willing to do both. And frankly, I had to think about it a minute. You know, I mean, being a CEO of a public company is not something you should take lightly, right? And I wanted to make sure I was up for it, and that my wife was up for it, and all of that. And so I said yes. I became CEO. I was CEO for 8 years, and very happy to say that oversaw or was part of, that's the better way to put it, one of the smoothest CEO succession ever in Fortune 500 company, which is that Kim Dang, for the whole 8 years that I had been CEO, Kim was either the CFO or the president. She was in the room on every big decision that we were making, every crisis we confronted, everything we had to go through as an organization, the integration of acquisitions, all of the things. And so the handoff was easy, which made it easy to say, I can retire now and go look for something else. And Kim's doing a fantastic job. And again, it was an extremely smooth transition because she's really good at what she does. And in a lot of those meetings in the room, I was trying to figure out, what does Kim Dang think we should do? And then how can I go make that happen? So she's going to do a fantastic job, is doing a fantastic job.
Tell me about these two individuals. They're pretty special.
Rich and Nancy Kinder, you know, and if you don't know who they are, you haven't been here long. You know, in addition to all the great things that Rich did in establishing a fantastic company and firm and setting the tone for how you run such an operation in such a place, and having that carry on through his successors, right? For all the great work that he did there and really setting the model for how a pipeline company and an energy infrastructure should be run, how it should be financed, how it should operate, et cetera, et cetera. He also decided that the focus of his philanthropy was going to be that he and Nancy were going to focus their philanthropy on our community. And thank God for that. If you look around, you can see what they've done and who they've done it for, whether it's in education specifically or for our whole community. The investments that they made in Memorial Park, in Discovery Green, in the Bayou Greenways, in the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, really incredible investments in making our city a great place for the people who live and work here. So that's a little bit about who they are. And so I grew up in Dubuque, Iowa. I will say, Rich Kinder grew up a little downriver in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, but similarly sized. Yeah, a little downriver. And he went to state schools at the time, the Big Eight. Yeah. Mizzou and Iowa State were in the Big Eight, and then went to law school at the University of Missouri, and still has strong ties with that institution in addition to what they've done at Rice University and other places.
They're pretty special. And now we're going to talk about Greater Houston Partnership, but I want to go back. We kind of skipped through this. One of 5 children. I'm one of 13. Mm-hmm. Are you a middle child? Are you the baby? Or are you the oldest? Second. Okay.
The more remarkable part of that, I don't know how it unfolded in your family, but my mother and father got married later in life. My mother was the first in her family to go to college. She had a career, which was an unusual thing at the time when women were getting married at 16, and lucky to finish high school. And she went to college. She was a school teacher. She worked at the newspaper. She worked at the local utility. She met my father. They got married. They were in their early 30s, and they had all 5 of us in the 6 years that followed. So it was quite a tight cluster of Keans that were born in that period. That's, I don't know how the 13 shook out there, Bill.
No, pretty.
It was a tight shop.
There was a tight shop. We ran a tight shop with 2 sets of twins.
Two sets of twins.
Yes. Bless their hearts, as they say here. So let's turn to the Greater Houston Partnership. I can tell you a story that I was on I continue to be on the executive committee of the Greater Houston Partnership, and Bob Harvey had obviously done a really great job, and I was so delighted that Mark Watts was leading up the search, because Mark Watts, if you haven't met him, he's a tour de force in the state, not just in the city. And then when I heard rumblings that you may be interested, and you were still finishing the job, you weren't even out of the job, and we were really excited about it. Talk about that process, because I don't think that was in your plans at all.
No, it's funny how things unfold in life, but I had decided that I wanted to retire from being a corporate CEO while I still had gas in the tank, while I still had, the energy for another surge at something. I didn't know what that something was going to be. The best advice I got from all my good friends was, you need to take some time off. You need to talk to some people, take some time off, and then come back and talk to some people again. Yeah. And so that's what I was going to do. And so, but we announced that I was retiring early. So we announced in January, and I was retiring in August. And in the meantime, Bob approached me and said, "I'm retiring, and you should consider this." And at first, I was thinking, well, not exactly what I had in mind. I was going to take this time off, and. But then I talked to the search committee, and so it was Mark Watts, and it was Paul Hobby, and it was Ruth Simmons, and I told Mark Watts, I said, "I'll interview for this damn job just to meet Ruth Simmons," okay? But it was Ruth Simmons, and anyway, Thad Hill, Armando Perez, a great group of people with big plans for the partnership, and clearly what I like to call Houston patriots. I mean, we have a lot of those in our community and in our business community. You're one. These are people who are very much involved in their work and their business and accomplishing what they can for their organizations, et cetera, but also have a very civic and community-minded focus and want to build something here, beyond just what they're doing in their work, as important as it is, right? And so I could see all of that in the search committee, and so it became a hard yes, and I retired on July 31st at Kinder Morgan. I started showing up at the partnership on August 1, trying to get my 100 days behind me before I had day one, and then started December 1 officially.
Wow. So this is just a slide. We won't beat you down with PowerPoints, but talk about this, because the role in which Greater Houston Partnership, a lot of people might not understand this, but when other countries, other cities, other industries want to interface, often the Greater Houston Partnership is kind of the landing spot for all of that. And what I've found really impressive about your early time, you did a listening tour for, I don't know how many people you met, but even just in the medical center. You met with a lot of people about this. Dozens. So will you talk a little bit about the economic development and your vision?
Yeah, so first, you're exactly right. I was looking through just the run of the day at the partnership offices earlier in this week, and it was like people from Pakistan were coming in, people from Taiwan were coming in, there was another country I can't remember right now coming in, and this is the place that people come as Houston's sort of front door. And we have the largest collection of consulates outside of New York here in Houston, remarkable place. But part of the background there is the history. City leaders, business leaders, back in the late 80s when Houston was kind of on its back after a round of difficulties in the energy sector, said, why do we have a World Trade Center, which is that's a bit of a brand in the international community. We have a World Trade Center, we have an economic development organization, and we have a Chamber of Commerce that's been around for over a century. Why do we have three? Why don't we have one? And so they put it together. And so economic development is done here. Membership and engagement, like you would see at a chamber, is done here. Public policy work is done here. And then several initiatives. Economic development is what's featured here. And I think a couple of key points. This is a bit of a broader statement about how Houston works together and what makes our community great, what makes our people great, what makes our metropolitan area great. People work together here. In a lot of parts of the country, the people working on economic development in a large metro area are competing with each other. Here in Houston and at the Greater Houston Partnership, we have 95 economic development organizations that are working together in the Houston Regional Economic Development Alliance to work on all the prospects that are coming in to our region and to pursue the ones that make the most sense in the woodlands or in Sugar Land or in the Bay Area, et cetera. So we do a lot of work in that organization and collecting the best proposals that we have for the prospects that we have that come in from the state of Texas, for example, uniting them into one proposal back so that a site selector, a prospect, can choose where they need to be. And then we compete.
Right.
Then we compete to land it specifically in a place. But as several people told me in this organization, we compete for the region first, because if the region wins, I'll get something. I'll get something out of this. Then what that allows us to do is to take a more strategic focus on some subsectors where we really have the opportunity to establish the rest of the cluster. When you get a cluster formed in life sciences and medicine, for example, you get a multiplier impact on each dollar that's spent because it tends to stay in the community. We have that in energy. We're nearly there on life sciences. So on energy, it was about making sure that as we decarbonize and new energy technologies emerge, we want Houston to remain as the capital. We have 270 energy transition startups in Houston now. We are on the map in that community as well as the traditional oil and gas. Life sciences, I've really enjoyed our work together. I mean, what you have here, what you've built out here, is the kind of thing that I think people from Boston and from San Diego are going to come and look at and say, I've got a for-profit life science firm. I didn't used to be able to locate in the Med Center because it was not for profit. Right. And you changed that. You and the Med Center team changed that. And so now here you are with this in the shadow, part of the Med Center. You can hit a rock. You can hit it with a rock from here. And so I think the visual of this place, the fact that all that research is going on, all that instruction and training is going on, 1 out of 5 clinical trials are done here, 10 million patient interactions a year. We've got everything we need now to move ourselves from 11th or 12th in life sciences up to 1 or 2. We'll go for number 1, right, Bill?
I love it.
And so
I love it.
I can go on, but that's it in a nutshell.
Tell us about aerospace and now, because there was a feeling at one point that we all grew up at NASA. John F. Kennedy made that great speech at Rice University. Tell us about what's happening with aerospace, SpaceX, and others.
Yeah, so manned space flight is still headquartered here, and so we train at Ellington Field and in the Johnson Space Center. We train astronauts from other countries as well as our own, et cetera. That kind of core activity that's always been a part of NASA is still here, but new stuff is coming. If you go down to Ellington Field, and I'll tie back to the HRITA thing, we work with the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership there, and those guys are fantastic. I mean, they know Johnson Space Center and Ellington Field and the developments going on there. That is part of Houston, by the way. They know what's going on there like the back of their hands. And so they can really generate unbridled enthusiasm for prospects that we get in. So we get Axiom, we get Intuitive Machines. So the new companies that are working on different aspects attracted an investment from A&M, $200 million to invest in lunar and Martian surface to train on those surfaces. That's what they're going to be building down there, right adjacent to the Johnson Space Center. So a lot of exciting things. I was down there, a husband and wife team, Venus Aerospace. He was an A&M professor. They are starting and they're testing hypersonic engines, which ultimately would lead to air transportation, if you can imagine this. San Francisco, I wish they'd put this in Houston terms, but San Francisco to Tokyo in 2 hours, okay? And they are testing the prototypes now. They're doing that next to where TSU is training their Tigers, their pilots. Tigers Air or something like that. They have their training facility for the TSU program that's training pilots. Right next to that is Venus Aerospace, where hypersonic precursors are being tested. That's the kind of thing that we have going on.
2 hours.
2 hours, yeah.
To Tokyo?
And most of the time is spent getting above where you can hear the sonic boom. So if you get to 80,000 feet, they know this from the shuttle testing, or from the shuttle, if you're above 80,000 feet, you can't hear the sonic boom.
And very little friction.
On the ground, yeah,
Right.
Very little friction, right.
Advanced manufacturing.
Advanced manufacturing, I toured the Daikin facility today. It's the third largest manufacturing facility in North America. They make air conditioners. We can use those here. But it's, partly automated, a little bit like partly what you would see on an Amazon warehouse floor, where there's vehicles, autonomous vehicles that are moving the heavier stuff from place to place, but still very people intensive there. They have thousands of employees. Let's see, 6,000 employees in that particular manufacturing facility, 9,000 employees overall. Fantastic story. So we're building some capabilities there that we could extend into other advanced manufacturing. If you put a couple things together there, or back here, life sciences and advanced manufacturing, biomanufacturing is one of those sectors that we're going hard at, subsectors that we're going hard at where we may have an advantage.
We're going to hear a lot more about cell therapy manufacturing. It's already happening here at CTMC and others, and growing out that platform. We think it's the future of many of the therapeutics. Moving from blood into solid tumors is a really exciting thing for us going forward. So you're going to hear more. Okay, we're going to shift for a second away from that. And I hear you're a reader of the classics. And I love that because I also love the classics. So we're going to do a little test.
Oh my God, no, this will not work. First of all, the premise is flawed, and I pointed this out, okay? I'm involved in classical education, but I was not classically educated in Dubuque, Iowa.
Let's put it out to the audience.
Let me just say, all right? So
there's prizes awarded here for the audience. Name a book that author William Golden wrote. Anyone? Lord of the Flies. Oh, by the way, are you from our UK teams that are over here? I just want to give a shout out. I don't know if you know this, Steve. We've got incredible 15 companies that just landed here this week from the United Kingdom, part of our BioBridge program. So huge shout out for our UK friends here.
Welcome to Houston. Welcome to Houston. The drinks are on Bill.
Well, let's keep this going, because if we've got really talented
this is a null set here.
All right, the next one, Jack London.
Call of the Wild, I got that.
Boom. All right, Kelly of the Wild. All right, J.D. Selling.
Catcher in the Rye. So this
Look
is
at
easier
this.
than I thought.
I'm giving you the layups.
You didn't get past 8th grade here.
Right? And Scott Fitzgerald.
There's several, but I don't have one.
Oh, what? Great Gatsby. Ding. Free drinks right over here. All right? Light it up. There it is. And finally, tell me about this book that you're reading right now.
Yeah, this is not a classic so much, but how many people in here know who Jonathan Haidt is? We got one here. So this is a remarkable author, and one thing this is one of his books, but another thing I encourage you to read, I think he's got a recent book out on social media and how it's impacting our brains, but he wrote a kind of a long-form piece in The Atlantic several years ago now, and he traces back some of the degradation in our societal debate to really two technology things. One was the introduction of the like on Facebook and the retweet. And so what happened, it took a while, but what happened in those things is sort of the seas parted here, and sort of, all the rest of us were sort of on the sidelines, and just the combatants were in the middle of the arena. And that's what happened in social media. It's been very divisive. So The Righteous Mind is a little bit more of a social psychology analysis of what causes, can you read the whole title on there, what causes good people to disagree on politics and religion. And what he does is he takes you kind of through what social science knows about the 6 ethical and moral reasoning systems that we have, right? And we all have them to kind of one degree or another, but they're very different models. Some of it is about, respecting authority and patriotism and things like that, the group and all of that, and some of it is about taking care of others, as you might imagine. And these things we all have them, but they're distributed unevenly across us. And that tends to create division. And when people get too far inside of their own single bubble, they disagree with each other vehemently and can't see their way clear to find the goodness in each other's positions and in each other's selves, right? One of his interesting observations, and he's very clear that he's a liberal Democrat, and part of how we started doing some of this analysis and study was to try to figure out how to help Democrats win in the presidential elections. What he discovered in this, to, not to his dismay, because he was very open-minded, but that conservatives tend to have the complete slate of moral systems at work at a higher level. I mean, not amped up, not spiked in any one particular area, whereas liberals tend to focus on one or two. They tend to predominate. And he tested this by showing that liberals are less able to articulate the conservative position other than in a cartoonish way or a caricature way, whereas on the other hand, conservatives are actually often able to articulate the reasonable basis for a liberal position. So anyway, I recommend the book. It helps you understand people better and helps you stay out of arguments a little bit better.
Summer reading list, take a picture. Here we go. All right, next. Tell me about this lovely person.
So this is my wife of 30.
Can we just put everyone, just put a pause for a second?
38 years, yeah.
No.
Maggie plus one. So this is my wife, so I don't know what to say about her. She's been everything to me and my family. We met in law school. I met actually briefly in undergrad. We had 2 kids. They were 12 months apart too, but we put a stop to that. So we sort of figured it out. She's so when I was being recruited for this job, or interviewed for this job, I wasn't recruited, interviewed for it. I said I got one thing that none of the other candidates do, and that's my wife. She knows your ancestors. So my wife for a long time, she's got her PhD is from Rice University in history. She was a university historian for a couple of decades. Does anybody know who she is or read her blog? Any Rice people in here?
Over there?
Yeah, so she knows, she has nearly identical memories. She knows Rice and Houston inside and out. She recently retired, which for an academic, for those of you who are academics, means that you keep doing the same thing you were always doing. You just don't get paid for it any longer. And she's also very involved in the school that we're involved in, et cetera. And so
which leads me to the next picture.
That's my wife. I can't summarize her.
Yeah, no.
This is the St. Constantine School.
38 years?
38 years.
Same with me.
Yeah?
Just celebrated it.
All right,
yes.
man.
Yeah, keep it going. Keep it going. Tell us about this special place.
So this is the St. Constantine School. Here, they do read the classics, okay? This is a classical Christian school.
Yep.
And you got some of the stats up here. 2015 is when we started. We started with about 100 students. Let me tell you we're now up to 550. A couple of remarkable things about this, unusual things about this, because I could go on and on about it. Number one, in this school, everybody teaches. Everybody teaches. The president teaches. The person in charge of accounting, the CFO teaches. The CFO, who we're just now losing, we're going to have to replace her. The CFO teaches trigonometry and pre-calculus, and was going to teach Russian in the fall. It's an extraordinary place. Everybody teaches. It runs all the way through college. So it's book-based, so we don't have an engineering school. I mean, these are people reading the great texts and getting degrees in them, in classical studies and Orthodox Christian studies and the like. We don't admit based on academic merit. We admit based on commitment to the culture of the place and a family interview. Nevertheless, we're able to drag every student through AP Calculus before they graduate. And I think we do a tremendous job of improving academic achievement. Even without screening for academics, our SAT scores, I guess this is a year old now, but our SAT scores were in the 89th percentile. So an extraordinary place. 20% of the teachers they're also parents in the school. And so you can imagine what this might be like. Everybody teaches. Many of the teachers are parents. The kids are there. The parents are teachers. Everybody who works there also teaches. There is no disconnection between the mission of educating this child, right, and the people who are working there. It is all integrated and connected. And I can take no credit for how that came about. I mean, it's just a very blessed place.
Wow, that's impressive. So now comes the fun time, our audience participation. We will go over to the panel and see what's come up. Take a moment to text out here. Okay, ready for this? I love these. What is the distance in degrees between the hands of a clock at 3:15? I know where this came from. Came from Isaac Middleton, and we're scratching that.
Okay. Well,
we just interviewed.
We're not counting the fact that the long hand runs a little bit ahead to reflect that there's a quarter hour, right? Yes, we are.
Oh.
All right. Well, I can't give you the degrees exactly, so now I have to do some arithmetic, right? Because, I guess that's 15 over 60, 15. Yeah,
Okay, ignore him. I'm sorry. So just for everyone, we just did interviews. So we've got a great strategy and new ventures team. And so we recruit really talented people from all around the country for these roles. And we got down to our last 6. And every one of our team, our CFO, COO, myself, we did half-hour interviews for the whole day today. And these really incredible, talented people were in, and I didn't know this, but Isaac gave them the clock test. So, which is, we'll come to that another time. What made you decide not to be a lawyer and move to oil and gas?
Also kind of a total accident. So when I was coming out of law school, and I came from a place where I had no real contact with business, I went to work for a company in El Paso, as I mentioned, and I happened to get into an industry that was going through rapid restructuring. So there were regulations coming out, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And so that had 2 impacts. One is that because it was coming from regulators and they needed to be read, interpreted, they needed to be implemented, drafting needed to be done, contracts needed to be redone, all of a sudden the lawyers mattered. Right? The lawyers mattered. So I was in the thick of it. I could be in the thick of it, which made a transition to a business career for a lawyer easier than it might be in other contexts. That was number one. The second thing was that because this was all new, the people who had 20 and 30 years experience didn't have much on me, if you will. Like, experience was devalued in that context where everything was new. So I knew as much about the new stuff, if not more, than they did. And I don't mean this just in a purely competitive context. I just mean it allowed somebody who was young to advance, right? And so pure dumb luck, which I now incorporate into my advice to lawyers all the time. You need to come out of law school, find that kind of churn, or coming out of business school, find that kind of churn, because it will tend to give you, in your early years, more value faster, seek higher responsibility faster, adjust to the changes faster than the people who are already there, and you will advance.
All right. What is Houston going to look like in 2029?
I'm trying to think how it would have looked if you had asked that question, 5 years ago. And would you have gotten it right? Would I have gotten it right? And I don't think I would have necessarily. And so I'm left with the sort of the more of the same, right? I mean, we will continue to be more diverse. We'll continue to attract more people from other places. That 1 in 4 foreign-born, 30% of our workforce. Let me put it this way. If you think demographics are destiny, and it's going to become increasingly apparent, our population worldwide hasn't finished peaking. But in the developing world, the number of kids entering elementary school, we're going to see it there. We're going to see it there fast. We're going to see it workforce with retirement. Our demographics here are running a little bit in the other direction, and they're unique in that regard. In the developed world, this is a rare place. I mean, be grateful for it. I came from a Rust Belt city. Be grateful for what we have here. I left a place not because I didn't love it, but because I couldn't get a job there. Be grateful for what we have here. We have vibrancy here that is uncommon. We have a cohesion here that's uncommon. Dallas has vibrancy. Dallas does not have welcoming, okay, to the same extent, at least, that we do here. This is a wonderful place. So I think By contrast, what I would say is we will be distinguishing ourselves versus other parts of the developed world in terms of this place and arguably the Texas Triangle overall being like New York City was a century ago. You know, with our best years still very much ahead of us and much more to come. So not just more of the same, but real distinction, I think.
Yeah. Okay, ready? Then we're going to go rapid fire now. Are there any updates on the bullet train between Houston and Dallas?
I'm going to call on Andy Icken to give us that update.
A shout out to our dear friend Andy Icken, Chief Development Officer for Houston for how many years? 18 years.
Yes. And
I want a round of applause for that because
Yes.
I got to tell you.
as I introduced him to you before, he's a Houston playmaker. That's what
Yes.
he does. So met with that crew here recently. I think the big development is, and it's not all that recent, but they have Amtrak involved now,
Right.
which will help give it a boost. You know, I'd love to see it. I think a lot of people would love to see it. The ability to instead of being on 45 or instead of hassling with Hobby and Love Field, to just get on the train and go from near Center City to Center City, back and forth. I think it has its challenges. You know, they've acquired some of the right-of-way. They're going to need to get it all. You've got to deal with, and this is a very different thing about permitting linear infrastructure over the last decade or so. You really have to have the community's almost permission to be there, right? And that's tough. That's tough. And they're going to have to overcome some things about Made in America requirements. I think they can do that. But I think really it's that it's a huge capital investment. It takes a long time to get it done. And it's linear right-of-way, which means you have to get other people's permission on the route.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, 50-50.
Okay. Wow. What piece of advice, and there's a lot of emerging leaders and leaders in their own right here, what's your piece of advice you would give to a young business leader here in the crowd?
Okay, I'll go back to what I said before. Find the place where there's churn, where you're going to be able to, if you work hard and your commitment meets opportunity, you're going to be able to advance more quickly. If advance is what you want to do. I mean, some people obviously find their purpose and meaning and fulfillment in other arena outside of their work, but if you talk about it in terms of a business person and what they want to do, that's what I would look for. Look for the churn, look for the growth, get yourself in there, and make of it what you will.
All right. I think this is, I'm just going to call this out from, I think it's probably a former, I used to live in London for many years, UK, I think 10 years. Here's a question, I think, from some of my new friends from the UK. What would you change about your, I'm sorry, what would made you fall in love with Houston because it's bloody hot? Just a guess.
And God knows that weather in London is so gorgeous and beautiful. You know,
That's right. Well done. Well done.
we all get our time to live with these things. I mean, I remember growing up in Seattle was like, that's where you went to get seasonal affective disorder and depression, right? And now somehow it turned into Eden. Tell me how that happened. Prosperity, success, that's what makes it happen. Coming from Omaha, Nebraska, I was one of those few people who was actually looking forward to the weather here. And it's really, I mean, the heat's okay. Just, you know, just live your life, you know, and enjoy the winter.
I'm from Connecticut, and I call my brothers every January when I'm out on the weekend playing golf and just saying, how are you doing? Are you scraping the windows of your car? They hate me. They call me the weatherman because I call them all the time. What would you change about your journey to becoming CEO twice?
You know, I'm sort of a move forward person.
Yeah.
So anything that I want to change, I try to reflect in going forward attitude. You know, there's a phenomenon certainly when you're working hard and trying to move forward and getting ahead, you can not pay as close of attention to the people along the way. And as one person put it to me during the pandemic, people have stopped hastening by. And I think more attention to the relationships along the way, you know, and so I've tried to change that and reflect that going forward.
If you had to choose Manchester United or Manchester City?
Who's the underdog? Man City.
Yeah. Here's another one. How is Houston going to compare to the startup ecosystems in Boston and San Diego? Are we going to follow their model or mostly differentiate and specialize?
That is a great question, and I think it contains the answer in it. I don't think you win by imitation. You have to find the thing that is where you can uniquely contribute. And you mentioned earlier cell and gene therapy, and cell and gene therapy, as I appreciate it, proximity matters. Yes. Proximity to patient care matters. I mean, you could freeze the stuff and put it on a plane or whatever, but really, it's much better to do it and treat directly to do that work. Proximity matters. In things like AI, in things like tech, we're making our way there by attracting that 270 energy tech startups, where if they're going to prove that what they have, that they can make a beaker of in their lab, is going to work at scale, they have to access the Houston ship channel. Okay, and that's why those 270 companies are here. They're not here for our preferential weather. They're here because they know that this is where they're going to prove it at scale and where they'll find their exit, maybe because somebody will buy them, somebody will partner with them, somebody will provide capital. So those are two examples. On AI, I think it's in applications. AI is new enough that there's still room, for us to differentiate. And so again, if you're going to solve real problems, going back to Jonathan Haidt, AI can certainly help us aggravate each other to greater efficacy in social media, okay? But if you want to solve how energy gets produced, if you want to solve life science problems like how proteins are folded and other things, here's where the real problems are. It's not about Facebook, it's about the ship channel and the med center and all the things that we do here. And so that's where our conversations in the tech community are focused, the applications and how we can differentiate ourselves. Another place would be education. Can you imagine, we have 120 languages spoken at HISD. Can you imagine a teaching assist in your language, in your dialect, keeping track of how you're progressing, backing up if you need to, identifying the thing you're having trouble with and repeating that lesson, right? It would be great to prove that here.
So I'm going to add on to that answer, particularly on the life sciences, because we have new guests in our community, and I think that when you look at places like this, these 38 acres, and this is kind of the clubhouse, if you will, the intention was to create the most efficient ecosystem from discovery to commercialization. Now, you might say that's a bold, audacious Texas kind of view of the world, but we already had the largest clinical platform anywhere in the world here. We already had the most amount of clinical trials happen. So if you look from an entrepreneur's perspective, what would you do? Well, first you'd build an accelerator. And not just any accelerator, an accelerator that wrapped around all these incredible companies, which we have another 16 that just arrived from the United Kingdom. And you'd wrap around them all the things they need to get through speed of meeting with experts, of doing pilots, of understanding their intellectual property, understanding the nuances of this healthcare system. And you'd wrap around them all of that, and you'd do it quickly because time and money is so precious to these young companies. And then you'd build co-working spaces, and you'd do it at cost. You're not looking to make money because they don't have any money. So you're looking to reduce their burn. And then you build a medical device area like no other maker space. So if they're a medical device, they can build it and make it happen. And then on the therapeutic side, you build an accelerator. Tom runs the largest accelerator now for all of CPRIT in the state of Texas. And then you find great entrepreneurs that have done it before, because remember, you have scientists in labs at MD Anderson and Baylor College of Medicine, Houston Methodist and UT and A&M, and the list goes on, 64 institutions. And instead of just asking that scientist to take this new discovery and just kind of throw it over the wall, or worse, continue to work on it in their lab when they are scientists. You find people like Michael Torres, and you find Sarah Himes, and you find these really talented people that actually can take that technology and bring it out into the sphere of getting it invested, to move through clinical trials, to move through the data. And what you do is then you launch a venture fund and you put that behind, and you are the first to invest. Even though it's the highest risk time of a company's life, you make that bet. And you don't make it to make money. You take that money and you put it back into the next company and the next company and the next company. So that's what this 38 acres is about. It's about creating a new place for commercialization, and it takes a village. And it's really exciting because we have our guests, 15 of really exciting companies from the UK. Our BioBridge program is now at the UK. It's with Australia. It's with Ireland. It's with Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I mean, it's just going on. And we'll open 2 more. And then we get the best of the best companies in technology, because that's not something that is owned by the US. As a matter of fact, we find 60% of the companies that we have and host here are from around the world, because the greatest ideas are not limited by their borders, just your intellectual curiosity and your ability to dream. And so this is now becoming a clearinghouse in the largest life science ecosystem in the world. And that's what the strategy is all about. And it's not something that's just TMC. It's beyond TMC. It's in the woodlands. It's in other aspects. So everyone that is winning around innovation is our partner. Everyone that is leaning forward to really build out this ecosystem is part of that recipe. So we're really excited about this. You're going to see this entire campus filled over the next 10 years. And that's the exciting thing for us, because we're just getting started, and we're honored to have our guests from the UK here and many others, because that's what makes this ecosystem really great.
You're completing the circle here.
Exactly.
For the whole life sciences ecosystem. And the other thing, and you mentioned it, is that this place starts, because it started with patient care and education, doctors, research, and things like that, it starts from a great cultural and ethical place, which is, it's not just some startup somewhere in the suburbs of Boston or whatever. This is a place where we cure and heal people. Right, and that culture surrounds all the people who are working in the medical center, and that'll surround our life sciences community as well. And so that's a wonderful place to be starting from.
And what I get most excited about is, you're going to see on these floors, David, is David still here? There's David. David's leading up, I think, one of the most exciting things around data, AI, in oncology, not just for MD Anderson, which just crushes it, but David has a much larger view about what we do with all the data. 10 million patients a year, largest data set, real time, anywhere in the world. And what I love is now we have leaders who used to just come and show up with your logo. And now we've got leaders like David, came out of Toronto, and really has a much larger view of even his remit of MD Anderson. And that's what's exciting is, I used to refer to the medical center as a federation of monarchies 12 years ago, because they were all known for their brands, and they were very myopic, and they were very focused, and they were all wildly successful. Largest cancer center in the world, Texas Children's, largest children's hospital in the world. And those were brands that we're really proud of and we love. What's really exciting is to see the things that they're naturally doing together. Chris McKee's here from MD Anderson. I mean, very a collaborative mindset. This building would not happen without MD Anderson leading through, UT, Health, A&M. That's what takes a village. It's people changing what they're used to doing, because it's easy to do what you're used to doing. And now I'm seeing people doing things very differently, and you see this building filling up with people that are just colliding every day about the next step that we take. And I think it's one of the greatest times. This next 20 years will be the greatest 20 years, I believe, in our 80-year history. And but more importantly than that, I want to thank you, because you've come into this role. GHB is a really powerful role. Not powerful as far as just power itself. It's the welcome mat to Houston. And I often find, and I'm going to say this, and Houstonians won't like me saying this, Houstonians are the worst at selling Houston. It's so damn hot and so humid. I'm sorry.
No. It is an incredible city. I'm most proud of the way in which we celebrate diversity. I had a candidate today that said, I come into this town, I feel really welcome. And I said, you'll find about this town, you can walk into any restaurant, you will feel comfortable. It is natural, the way in which we celebrate diversity. When many things happened around the country, when there was great divide, you didn't see that in Houston, or if you saw it in a much more warm and embracing way. That's the gift. And I also find for Houstonians themselves, maybe that's why you're here from Iowa and I'm from Connecticut, could not be more warm and genuine. Mm-hmm. When someone meets you here, they want to help you succeed. They kind of pull you. It's a little, sometimes over the top, frankly. It's a little shocking, because in New England, if someone comes says hello to you, you're like, what do you want? Here, it's just kind of the DNA. So I want to thank you for, I know it's been, how many days now are you in office?
6 months.
6 months. You've already set the tone for getting things done in a collaborative way. You're not accepting, you're kind of picking up and starting over in a sense, and really making sure that this is an economic engine of this city. And I'm so proud to have you as a friend. I'm so proud to see your leadership already in 6 months, and I think we're just going to crush it. So a huge round of applause for Steve Kean,
Thank you.
CEO.
Thank you.
The bar is still open. Please join, network, and enjoy yourself. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you.